This former sea captain, author, speaker knows what it's like to be in turbulent situations. Traveling throughout the United States and Canada, training on creative leadership and emotional intelligence, and coaching dozens of clients on personal and business mastery. He has unveiled timeless secrets to help people see lives in a different light. He has helped countless people in leadership positions to look inwardly and find new ways to manage their companies and their lives in a proactive manner and to weather the storms of their business and their lives. After spending 25 years as a sea captain and most of his adult life as an entrepreneur and owner of multiple businesses, he has endured many early storms. His book, entitled Wisdom from the Sea, consists of 6 short stories that deal with life's challenges and is available on Amazon.com. To help Rotary members to expand their horizons and to take a voyage of mental preparedness, join the captain as he takes to new destinations, new adventures. Throw your bow lines loose from the moorage, hoist your sails, and strap yourself in for a journey where we will take a close look at what to do should we encounter the perfect storm.
Not quite exactly in the service of the crown.
Look, if you had one shot, one opportunity to see something you ever wanted, one moment, would you capture it? Just let it slip. Yo. His palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy. There's vomit on his sweater already. Mom's spaghetti, he's nervous, but on the surface he looks calm and ready to drop bombs. But he keeps on forgetting what he wrote down. The whole crowd goes so loud, he opens his mouth, but the words won't come out. He's choking how? Everybody's choking now. The clock's run out, time's up, over, loud. Snap back to reality. Oh, there goes gravity. Oh, there goes gravity. Choke. He's so mad, but he won't give up. Daddies, he knows he won't have it. He knows his whole back to these ropes. It don't matter. He's gone. He knows that, but he's broke. He's so sad that he knows when he goes back to this mobile home. That's when it's back to the lab again, yo. This old rhapsody better go capture this moment and hope it don't do it. Lose itself in the music, the moment you own it. You better never let it go.
Please welcome James Ivano as our speaker.
Have you ever had a day like that? Yeah. Seriously, have you ever had a day where you felt so overwhelmed, where everything came together all at once, and you, no matter what you did, you couldn't seem to overcome those obstacles? Now we go through our life and we all have perfect storms. Some of us handle them better than others. I've had my own share of perfect storms. I've been in perfect storms. I've been in 70-knot winds and 30-foot seas, and let me tell you, 70-knot winds, you can stand into it like this and it'll hold you up. 30-foot seas are 3 times as tall as the ceiling. When you're in those situations, you know you're close to your maker. I've led men through situations, and I'm guessing there's some leaders in this room today, right? Right? Where you've led other people, you've had employees. Now, I've had some people that really had to look to me because they were scared, they didn't know what to do. I've been in many life and death situations. I've been in situations where we didn't think we were going to get out of it. My book, Wisdom from the Sea, is 6 short stories of life and death situations that I survived. Because the ocean is not a place to be taken lightly. It dominates almost 2/3 of this planet. The ocean is a force of nature, and it has metaphors and anecdotes that I use in every talk I have. So today, I would like to share with you some things that I'm sharing with other people across the country. I used to lead from the ocean. I led a small business. I've owned several businesses, had employees. But today I'm leading from the lectern. And I'm coaching people. I'm helping people break through barriers and get through their perfect storms. Because you know what it really comes down to? It comes down to mental preparedness. And as leaders, we need to be strong. And as leaders, we need to be the cliff that the waves will break upon. They're looking to us. They're looking to us to lead them, to be strong, and to be equipped. Now in the movie The Perfect Storm, for all of you that have seen it, it's been a while ago. This movie was about the Andrew Gale. How many people have seen The Perfect Storm? A long time ago. You know, I was just talking to Rand about that. It was almost like 15 years ago that movie came out. It seems like not that long ago. But what happened was, the story's about this gentleman named Billy Tyne, played by George Clooney. And he was getting a lot of flack from his boss, if you remember how the story goes, about not producing enough. His numbers were down. He worked the operator to boat for another boat owner. And so his ego demanded that he did do something about it. So he headed offshore in the middle of October, and he took his men into a very perilous situation. But it wasn't just his ego. It wasn't just his ego. There was more to it than that. You have to understand something. As the story goes, there was a huge hurricane, or it was a tropical storm at that time, forming down in the Caribbean, and it was heading north. There was a huge storm coming down from the northeast, from Iceland. And there was another storm coming down from the Arctic. And these three storms would converge off the northeast coast of the United States and would create one of the biggest perfect storms in history. And that, they got the name of the perfect storm. Now he had a decision to make. He was a knowledgeable captain, he'd been around for a while, and he knew that he either had to go further east and get to the eastern side of that storm, and he could sit it out, or he would have to go back in harbor. But they may have been too late already. They were already in a position where there's a very good possibility that they'd waited too long, and now their ice machine broke down. The first few days of the trip, they didn't have many fish, and then the last couple of days, they started doing quite well. So they didn't want to lose these fish. So he proposed to the crew, we can either go east and sit it out and risk losing the fish, or we can go back to Gloucester and tough it through that storm and save our product. What do you want to do? What do you want to do, man? He knew those men were desperate. They were broke. They're fishermen. They decided to go home. And they went into that storm, and it cost them all their lives. They all died. Now, the question I have is, why did he do that? Because it was more than his ego. It was he had an agenda. He had an agenda that he was putting in front of his men's goodwill and their own safety. And people do that in business, don't they, sometimes? Some leaders will have an agenda that they won't take into account what's best for the employees or the people in the corporation or the company, whatever that looks like. So let's go back in time a little bit. Let's look at a different leader. Because I use a lot of characters from the maritime world because I am a sailor, and I have a huge fondness for people like Kennedy and Ernest Shackleton. Another character is Christian Fletcher, Mutiny and the Bounty. Because I taught emotional intelligence for about 5 years on the road. Christian Fletcher, as opposed to Captain Bligh, was a very emotionally intelligent character. And the men gravitated towards him. So Kennedy, coming from a very wealthy family that was really influenced by the sea. They had motorboats, they had sailboats, they did a lot of things on the ocean. Kennedy loved the sea. And he wanted to be a captain, so he went to the Naval Academy, and came out of the Naval Academy, they positioned him in the Solomon Islands. Now, how many people have heard of the story of PT-109? Okay, so this was back in, I think it was 1942, and he went to the Solomon Islands, and he was stationed in a place called Rendova Island, and that's where they ported the PT boats. They were called the Mosquito Fleet. And the reason they're called Mosquito Fleet is that they were very fast, and they had a sting. They shot torpedoes. Now, Kennedy he got there and he thought that he was just going to step on his boat and it was all going to be just dog soup for him, but it wasn't. He was actually a lieutenant at the time. And so they gave him this rundown boat called PT-109. It had palm fronds on it. It was a mess. And they gave him a ragtag crew that was, well, let's put it this way, they're disorganized. Matter of fact, he had them all there standing there one day, and he said, "How many of you know how to cook?" And one guy raised his hand. He says, "I do, sir." He says, "What do you know how to cook?" He said, "Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches." So they all kind of looked at each other, and Kennedy turned to him and he said, "Do you cook anything hot?" He says, "Yeah, I'll throw them in the toaster." And that's really what he had to deal with. That was really the situation that he had. So he mustered these men together, and he built a team. He was a true leader, and he brought them together, and they did like 3 missions. They had 3 missions under their belt. Things went smoothly. Things were going well. But then one night, their mission was to go out. They had a huge convoy of Japanese battleships and barges and cargo coming through to supply the troops, which pretty well were stationed throughout the Solomon Islands. So their job was to go out there and to be as quiet as possible and to report back, and if anything else, try to destroy one of the battleships with their torpedoes. So they get out there, and these PT boats had 2 engines and 2 props. So to stay as quiet as possible, they turn one of the engines off. They're idling ahead just at a really slow creeping pace, as not to make a disturbance in the water, because there's something called phosphorus in the water that would show up in the wake of the boat. And the Japanese planes would see it and report back to the ships. It's one of the ways that they would find these boats in the night. And they're idling along, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, one of the men yells, "Ship!" And here comes this big battleship out of nowhere, and the lights are all up, and it slices right through the PT-109 like it's butter. The ship is in 2. One of the men dies instantly. The tail end of the ship sinks. And the front part of the boat, the bow had an air pocket in it. It was still floating. So they're hanging on here, and they realized, they did a roll call. They realized there were 4 men missing. So they went in the water. Now remember, there's gasoline in the water. These are gasoline-powered boats. And there's gasoline in the water. So Kennedy went out there, and he swam around, him and a couple of the other men, and they found these men. And Kennedy actually drove one of the men back to the boat, saved his life. He's badly burned. 2 of the men were really severely burned. Now, Kennedy knew he had to do something. They couldn't stay there, so there's an island called Plum Pudding, and it's now called Kennedy Island, true story. And he knew he had to do something. But the problem was, these islands were inhabited by Japanese soldiers. You couldn't just go to any island and just set up a lawn chair. I mean, it was a dangerous situation. So they get to this island. Kennedy drugged this burned victim for 3 hours with the strap of his life jacket in his teeth, swimming. And he was a master swimmer at Harvard University. He's on the swim team. The other men they took 2 planks and they strapped them together, and they all swam together. There's a couple of them that couldn't swim, and they had another burn victim. They got to this island, and they soon realized there was no food or water. They knew they couldn't stay. So they slept for 6 hours. They rested for 6 hours, and then they swam to another island. And then they got there, and it's the same situation. There was no water or food. They could not stay. So there's one bigger island, and they didn't know if there were Japanese on it. They got to that island, and there's food and water, so they're okay. But still, there was no one there to rescue them. They had not seen one rescue boat or plane looking for them. And I came to find out that the Navy gave up on them on that first day. They assumed they were all dead. They never did send out a search party. 7 days later, 2 villagers find them and report back to their Australian superior that they were working with. He was stationed on one of these islands where the Japanese were at. And they got word back to Rendova to come and save these men. So Kennedy saved that man, and he helped the others get to safety, and Kennedy got the Medal of Honor for his service and for what he did. And he's a true leader. He was an emotionally intelligent leader. Warranted. He came from a family of privilege. He wasn't in the same situation as Billy Tyne, the captain of the Andrea Gale. But Kennedy was the kind of person that his crew loved. Why is that? Why would they love him? The man never put his needs in front of the needs of his men. He was an emotionally intelligent leader. He was there for them, and they knew they could follow him into battle. As opposed to Billy Tyne and his crew, they had desperation in their mind. And they were working for somebody that could care less about their outcome, their safety, and they all perished. So it's a great story, and we all have our own perfect storms in our life. Think back, though. Think to a time where you had something really traumatic happen to you. How did you handle that situation? Now, I had a couple perfect storms happen in my life. We all have, and I'd like to share them with you because it leads to the lesson I want to give you today before we leave. In 1987, off the coast of Northern California, I was shrimp fishing with my father. We're fishing side by side. He was on this boat right here, and I was on that bigger boat. I was 27 years old, and we were together fishing side by side, and there was a lot of shrimp. Things were going well. It was a beautiful, flat, calm ocean. And he had a problem is that his boat filled up with shrimp because it was so small, he literally filled the boat up, and he had to go in that. I was real proud of him, and I was proud of the fact that we're having a good time together. It was a great experience. Little did I know that that would be the last time I would ever talk to or see my father. That night they hit the rocks on the way home. The boat flipped over, and my father and my cousin were lost. See, the amazing thing was about this story is that he didn't even need to be there. He was there because he loved the ocean like Kennedy, like I do. He had a respect for the ocean. He loved it because he could get away from the small fishing empire that he built. He had a processing facility. He had 4 boats, 2 seafood restaurants, and a fleet of trucks, 150 employees. But it'd drive him crazy, and he'd go to the ocean to get away. And I remember that. And I thought to myself, you know, obviously it was a very devastating thing to happen. I was 27 years old. I really felt that I needed to take on his entire pile and see it through and help his legacy reach its end because he was gone. I had my mother to take care of. I had the employees at the plant, on the boats, my own family. I did this for 10 years until one evening I was anchored up in Monterey Bay, and I said, you know what? I'm not happy anymore. This isn't anything like I wanted, I expected in my life. My entire life changed that day when that perfect storm hit. My kids were growing up. My oldest was going to high school. I was missing their life, and it was not the same anymore. He was gone. And it took me a while to realize that, but it was not the same. I wasn't happy. The family was fractured. There was all this family politics happening. Sometimes that happens when the patriarch leaves or the leader of the family leaves. So here I was. I said, you know what? I want to get a different job. So I go in, I start looking for a job that I just want to be happy, no stress, a good income, see my kids grow up, have plenty of time, with the family. So what do? I go into mortgage banking. Yeah, probably not a really good idea. There's somebody here from U.S. Bank? Okay, so you will relate with this because I can tell you right now, in those 70 knot winds and those 30-foot seas, I've never had as much stress as I had when I was a mortgage banker. It was tough. A lot of stress in that job, and guess what? The money was good, but I'll tell you, there were days where you really didn't know if it was worth it. And then this happened. I just settled into my land lover life, is what I call land lover, not land lover. Land lover. I had to learn to love being on land. And this happened, and this was my second perfect storm. And did anybody feel the ramifications of this? I mean, if you had a portfolio, you saw your portfolio shrink, right? Your stock, or your mutual funds, or whatever, your 401k. Everybody was affected by this. I lost everything in this storm. And I had 5 loan officers, and I had 3 admin, and I had to close it down. There was a liposuction, or just a funnel of money just flying out of my bank accounts, and there was nothing you could do. But what was different about this perfect storm compared to the previous perfect storm is that when this happened to me, I realized this was different. Because, you see, I had started speaking. I started doing seminars. And I started doing things that were different than I ever thought I would do in my life. If you would have told me I'd be standing here today 15 years ago, I would have laughed at you. So I looked at it as like there's a lesson in everything that happens to us in life. It's inevitable. It's all about how we look at it, isn't it? It's how we look at the situation or the event when it happens. The difference is that there wasn't the sadness that I had before, because if you look at it as a calling, I look at it as something different. And I started to realize, you know what? I spent 10 years of my life after that first perfect storm, and I felt like I had ropes hanging around my neck, like I was dragging. Just picture yourself dragging an anchor on the bottom of the ocean. You're walking on the ocean floor with ropes tied around your neck. And then I started to realize, you know what? Every time that something happens in my life, a big thing like this, is that it's like putting your sword in fire and forging that sword, forging the steel. And the little things that happen are like the little sharpening stones that sharpen that blade. Because I had to release those anchors. I had to let them go. And it wasn't until I did the work, through reading, through certifications, through trainings, through everything I could do to convey to other people so they didn't have to go through the anguish and the pain. And I'm still teaching that lesson. So I can really honestly stand here and tell you that this was a different thing in my life, how it all happened. There were experiences I learned from this, and I call them waypoints. So any sailors in the room? You know what a waypoint is when you go from point A to point B. Sometimes there's little spots along the way that are called waypoints. One of the waypoints I learned is that don't live somebody else's life. Don't try to live up to the expectations that others put upon you. Live your life and live your life happily. Number two is I had to dive deep. I had to do this work. I had to get in a place in my mind to realize, and it took a lot of reading, it took a lot of exercise, and I still have my moments. But I have a better awareness of why things happen, why the emotions affect me the way they do. And thirdly, I started giving new meaning to the events as they happen in our life. And this doesn't have to be business, it could be your personal life, it could be whatever happens, because we all have things happen. Maybe the medical report doesn't look good. Maybe your relationship isn't going as well as you hope. Maybe something happened, maybe the deal doesn't close on your house, or whatever that looks like. So the question is, how will you handle the events as they happen in your life going forward? And I'd like to give you a couple things to think about. Number one, would you want to end up like Billy Tyne, or would you want to handle things like Jack Kennedy in their situations? I think it's fair to say that we'd all like to operate more like Jack Kennedy, more from an emotionally intelligent, calm place, because you get a lot more done, you have better results with the outcome. There's a saying, pain is inevitable and suffering is optional. Now, people that have chronic pain, that's not what I'm talking about. There's definitely people with physical ailments that have pain. I'm talking about when events happen in your life, it's how we interpret those events. 3 things to think about today as you go out that door today and go through the rest of your day, maybe it's during this week. I want you to challenge yourself to do this. I want you to become aware of the needs of those around you. If you have employees, or I don't know how many people are in business here still, but if you have employees and things happen, always think about your crew. And a lot of people don't do this. And I talked to some pretty big audiences, 500-600 people, and there are a lot of people that don't really take that into account, especially in corporations. Secondly, try to generate positive hope. And one of the best ways to do this is you have to really do the work. You have to find out why, you have to release those anchors, the different things that are holding you back in life. It might be something that's placed on you when you're a child, you don't know. And then thirdly, give new meaning to the events as they happen in your life. There's a saying that one of the greatest discoveries of our generation is that we have the ability to alter our attitudes. This is William James, one of the greatest philosophers of our generation. This is newer stuff. It's within this century. Well, as far as China goes. We've got the ability to change our attitudes. But it's when we stay in a place of pity, we stay in a place of doubt, we stay in a place of sadness. When we let our emotions bombard our values, the very things that we cherish in our life, this is when things start to go sideways. This is when we get knocked off course. You see, there's a time when I'd be at sea and I put the boat adrift at nighttime on a moonless night, 1,500 miles offshore, north of Hawaii. The dolphins are jumping at nighttime in the water. You can see the phosphorus. It's really surreal. You'd have to be there. For the sailors that are in the room, maybe you've seen that. But there's something about when you shut the lights off and there's no man-made light infusing the view. And you can see nothing but stars and galaxies. And I used to sit there with my crew, and we'd be in amazement, and I'd think to myself, there's more to life than what we see. There's something much bigger in our life. It's when we get so busy in our daily problems and our daily routines that we don't know how to handle the situation. We can't seem to find a way out. I can tell you I've seen things as a sailor that most people will never see in their life. Some of the things you will see, though, is you will see this. There's a saying in the fishing industry, Red skies in the morning. Sailors take warning. Red skies at night. Sailors be like, have you heard that? No. It's true. 9 out of 10 times you're going to have a storm the next day if you have a red sky in the morning. So I ask you, the next time you have a red sky in Bend, Oregon, I want you to think about my topic. Think about this conversation about remembering there's something much bigger in life. Remember there's people that are looking to you for answers. People that want you to lead them. It doesn't matter. There's a thing called leading without a label. You don't have to be a head of a corporation. It could be in your neighborhood. It could be at your church. It could be anywhere. But step up to the plate and be a leader. Finally, I have a little saying I like to say is that chart a bold destination. Let the sail, or let your bow lines loose from the dock, and let your sails fill with hope, faith, and endurance. Be prepared to handle the perfect storms. And set yourself a destination and lead, be the leader that you're meant to be in your life. Thank you very much. I'm honored to have been here today.
Very good.
We were pleased to have James join us for our Rotary Club meeting. It was a great presentation. I recommend James to come to your meetings, to hear his presentation and how he builds on his seamanship journey through his life and how that relates to his leadership principles and what he's doing today. So I highly recommend it.